Welcome to Globewise Entertainment, where hidden history meets classic Hollywood. Today we're diving into 12 of the most shocking banned and censored films of the 1960s, movies that pushed boundaries, broke taboos, and rattled censors around the globe. From explosive political statements to steamy scenes that were too hot for their time, these films didn't just entertain. They sparked outrage, protests, and in some cases, complete bans. So buckle up, movie lovers, because these aren't just forgotten reels. They're rebel films that shook the system. If you haven't already, subscribe to Globewise Entertainment for more untold Hollywood stories, rare cinema finds, and deep dives into film history. And let us know in the comments, which banned film shocked you the most? 1. Blow Up 1966. A snapshot that shook the world. In swinging London of the 1960s, where fashion ruled and rebellion bloomed, Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up captured more than just stylish photographs. It exposed a society grappling with truth, perception, and artistic freedom. At the heart of the film is Thomas, a jaded fashion photographer who lives behind the lens, snapping models and ignoring meaning. But one day, he captures what seems to be an ordinary couple in the park. In his darkroom, a horrifying truth slowly develops. Hidden in the grainy frames might be a murder. This subtle thriller blurred the line between illusion and reality, art and voyeurism. But what truly stirred international uproar was the film's bold nudity and sexual content, groundbreaking for its time. In the US, it became the first mainstream film to break the production code, leading to its replacement with the modern ratings system. Ireland, India, and several other countries banned it outright, calling it obscene and morally dangerous. Yet Blow Up wasn't just a scandal. It was a cinematic revolution. A film that whispered a message louder than censors could silence. Sometimes what you see isn't the whole picture, but it's enough to change everything. 2. Lolita 1962. The film that dared the unthinkable. In 1962, director Stanley Kubrick dared to bring one of literature's most scandalous novels to the big screen, Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. The story of a middle-aged professor's obsession with a teenage girl wasn't just taboo, it was explosive. Kubrick pushed forward despite strict censorship laws, choosing to cast Sue Lyon, just 14 at the time of filming, as the seductive yet vulnerable Dolores Hayes. To avoid a total ban, Kubrick used clever symbolism, suggestive dialogue, and restraint in visual content. But even then, the film was banned in multiple countries, including the UK, and faced heavy cuts elsewhere. In America, the censors allowed it with a restrictive rating, but conservative audiences were outraged. The poster alone, Lyon licking a lollipop with heart-shaped sunglasses, became an icon of controversy. Kubrick later admitted that censorship had forced him to compromise the film's power, saying he would not have made Lolita had he known the restrictions ahead. Yet, despite the backlash, the film went on to become a cinematic milestone, praised for its boldness and condemned for its content. 3. Viridiana 1961. Blasphemy in Black and White. When acclaimed Spanish director Luis Buñuel returned to his homeland after years of exile, he brought with him a film that would shake the foundations of Francoist Spain. Viridiana tells the story of a young nun who visits her uncle before taking her final vows. What begins as a solemn visit spirals into a disturbing series of events involving manipulation, moral decay, and an unforgettable dinner scene that eerily mirrors Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, only with beggars mocking religion instead of disciples sharing bread. Upon its debut, Viridiana was instantly praised internationally, even winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes. But back in Spain it was a different story. The Catholic Church and Franco's regime were furious. The film was banned immediately, with officials declaring it sacrilegious and subversive. Even Buñuel, despite being a Spaniard, faced censorship threats and was denounced by the Vatican. Ironically, the film's reputation only grew because of the ban. Viridiana became a powerful example of art's ability to provoke, challenge, and survive even the strongest political repression. 4. Peeping Tom 1960. The film that killed a career. In 1960, British director Michael Powell released Peeping Tom, a psychological thriller that dared to explore the darkest corners of voyeurism, obsession, and murder. It told the story of a shy cameraman named Mark who filmed women as he killed them, capturing their final moments in terror, not for money, but for art. Audiences weren't ready. When it premiered in the UK, critics didn't just dislike it, they destroyed it. They called it sick, filth, and evil. Newspapers attacked Powell personally, and theaters quickly pulled the film. Even though Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho came out the same year with similar themes, Peeping Tom was labeled a moral disaster. The backlash was so brutal, it ended Powell's career in Britain. Decades later, critics re-evaluated it as a masterpiece ahead of its time, now praised for its haunting cinematography and disturbing insight into the male gaze. But back in 1960 it was banned, censored, and buried. A film that dared to look too closely and paid the price. 5. The Damned, La Caduta degli Dei, 1969. A decadent descent into darkness. In the heart of Nazi Germany, a wealthy industrial family, the Essenbecks, begin to unravel from within. Power, greed, and perversion take center stage as the family's empire becomes entangled with the rise of Hitler's SS. What begins as a political allegory quickly spirals into a nightmarish descent of incest, manipulation, and moral collapse. Directed by Italian filmmaker Luchino Visconti, The Damned shocked audiences with its brutal depiction of the Night of the Long Knives, cross-dressing scenes, and sexual violence involving minors. It blurred the line between political critique and operatic grotesquerie. The film was banned or heavily censored in several countries, including parts of the US and Germany, for its graphic depictions of sexuality, Nazism, and incestuous overtones. Critics called it disturbing. Others hailed it as a masterwork of cinematic courage. To this day, The Damned remains a chilling portrait of how fascism corrupts not just politics, but the human soul. 6. Flaming Creatures, 1963. A provocative underground firestorm. In 1963, amid the raw artistic chaos of New York's underground film scene, director Jack Smith lit a match that would set the world of censorship ablaze. His film Flaming Creatures was unlike anything audiences had seen before. A surreal erotic dreamscape filled with drag queens, androgynous bodies, and sensuous chaos shot on deteriorating black and white film stock. The story? There wasn't one in the traditional sense. Instead, it was an abstract celebration and sometimes mockery of sexuality and identity. But that unfiltered exploration of gender fluidity and eroticism clashed violently with the moral standards of the era. Authorities swooped in. Screenings were raided. Film reels were confiscated. Smith's film was labeled obscene, and even prominent intellectuals like Susan Sontag and Jonas Mekas faced legal battles for defending it. For some, Flaming Creatures was revolutionary art. For others, it was dangerous, corrupting trash. Banned in many parts of the US and abroad, the film became a powerful symbol of freedom of expression versus censorship, a raw reminder that art can provoke, disturb, and challenge, all at once. 7. The Nun, La Religieuse, 1966. A film too bold for the church. In 1966, acclaimed French director Jacques Rivette dared to adapt Denis Diderot's 18th-century novel La Religieuse, a scathing critique of religious repression. The film tells the haunting story of Suzanne Simonin, a young woman forced into a convent against her will. What begins as a tale of faith quickly unravels into a harrowing portrait of psychological torment, abuse of power, and institutional cruelty. Suzanne's ordeal at the hands of cruel and manipulative mother superiors exposed the dark side of cloistered life, something the Catholic Church wasn't ready to see on screen. Even before its official release, the film sparked outrage in France. Religious authorities called it blasphemous. Government censors banned it outright, fearing it would offend public morals and religious sentiments. It wasn't until years later, after legal battles and international pressure, that La Religieuse was finally allowed to screen in France. Despite or because of its censorship, the film became a symbol of artistic resistance. Its bravery in confronting taboo subjects cemented its place in cinematic history. 8. Persona, 1966. The Silence That Spoke Too Loudly. In a quiet seaside cottage, two women existed on the edge of reality and identity. Elizabeth, a famous stage actress, had gone completely silent, struck mute by an unexplained psychological break. Alma, a young nurse assigned to care for her, arrived full of warmth and innocence, determined to draw the actress out of her silence. But silence can be louder than words. As days turned into nights, the line between caregiver and patient blurred. Alma spoke endlessly, pouring out her secrets, shame, and suppressed desires, while Elizabeth listened, eyes burning with silent judgment, or was it understanding? Then came the moment. One scene, just a moment on film, two faces merged into one. It was haunting, it was bold, and it was scandalous. Audiences around the world gasped. Some censors said it was obscene. Others called it psychologically dangerous. Many didn't know what to make of it. Ingmar Bergman, the film's Swedish director, had crafted something far more than a movie. It was a mirror of the soul. But for many nations, the mirror reflected too much. Banned in several countries, censored in others, Persona was seen as an attack on societal norms, sexuality, and the fragility of the human mind. Yet to this day, it's called one of the most influential films of all time. A cinematic riddle that still dares us to look inside. 9. Repulsion, 1965. The descent that was too disturbing to watch. In 1965, Roman Polanski unleashed a film that didn't need monsters or killers to terrify its audience. Just a lonely woman, a silent apartment, and the crushing weight of psychological decay. Repulsion tells the story of Carol, a shy and beautiful Belgian manicurist living in London. But beneath her quiet surface brews a storm of unresolved trauma and sexual repression. When her sister leaves for a holiday, Carol is left alone. And that's when the horror begins. Walls crack. Hands emerge from the shadows. A rotting rabbit sits uneaten, symbolic of Carol's slipping grasp on reality. As isolation deepens, she becomes increasingly repulsed by men, and dangerously unhinged. Polanski's eerie use of silence, shadows, and psychological tension shocked audiences and critics alike. The film dared to dive into mental illness, sexual abuse, and the horrifying experience of psychosis, all wrapped in arthouse elegance. But not everyone was ready. In Ireland and parts of the US, censors deemed the film too sexually suggestive and psychologically disturbing. Scenes hinting at sexual assault, hallucinations, and Carol's violent breakdown were trimmed or banned outright. Still, Repulsion became a landmark in psychological horror, and one of the first films to show that the true terror often lies within the mind. 10. Branded to Kill, 1967. The hitman film too weird for Japan. In the neo-noir shadows of 1960s Japan, director Seijun Suzuki crafted a gangster film so strange, so stylized, that it stunned everyone, including his own studio. Branded to Kill follows Goro Hanada, the third-ranked hitman in a deadly league of assassins. He's cold, calculated, and strangely aroused by the smell of boiling rice. But after a botched mission, he finds himself hunted by the mysterious number one killer, and spirals into paranoia, sex, and surreal violence. With rapid-fire editing, jarring jump cuts, and avant-garde imagery, Suzuki turned a simple hitman thriller into an experimental explosion of absurdity and death. Nikatsu Studios was not amused. They had hired Suzuki to make a straightforward action flick. What they got instead was a wild, hallucinatory anti-film. In response, the studio banned the movie and fired Suzuki, blacklisting him for a decade. Ironically, the film later became a cult classic, inspiring directors like Quentin Tarantino and Jim Jarmusch. What was once banned as nonsense is now hailed as genius. Branded to Kill didn't just break the rules, it vaporized them in a puff of boiling rice steam. 11. The Party and the Guests, 1966. A picnic-turned-political nightmare. On the surface, The Party and the Guests seems like a simple tale. A group of well-dressed friends head out into the countryside for a peaceful picnic. Laughter echoes, wine flows, and the air is light with conversation. But their carefree afternoon takes a strange, unsettling turn when a group of authoritarian men suddenly appears, interrogating them without reason and forcing compliance. Directed by Jan Nemec, the film quickly descends into an allegorical nightmare. The guests, once confident and free, begin to conform, obey, and even rationalize their captors' bizarre rules. As they're led to a strange banquet in the woods, where the host is oddly kind, yet disturbingly in control, the viewer realizes this is no ordinary gathering. This surreal Kafkaesque story was a sharp critique of authoritarianism, especially aimed at the oppressive political climate of communist Czechoslovakia. It was too bold for the regime. The film was banned almost immediately after its release, and Nemec was soon blacklisted. What makes the party and the guests so chilling is its quiet, civilized horror, the way ordinary people accept oppression without resistance. It remains a haunting reminder of how fascism often wears a friendly face, and how freedom can be lost over a glass of wine and polite conversation. 12 Faster, Pussycat. Kill. Kill. 1965. The outlaws who terrified America's screens. In the vast, unforgiving Mojave Desert, 3 go-go dancers roar across the sand in fast cars, tight outfits, and hotter tempers. But this wasn't just another B-movie. When Faster, Pussycat. Kill. Kill. Hit the screen in 1965, America wasn't ready. Directed by Russ Meyer, the film followed Varla, Rosie, and Billy, 3 violent, voluptuous women who weren't damsels in distress. They were danger in heels. Varla, the leather-clad leader, doesn't just fight. She kills with her bare hands. This film flipped every 1960s gender stereotype on its head. Women weren't victims, they were the threat. Critics called it obscene, degenerate, and unwatchable. The censors hated it. Some states refused to screen it. Others demanded edits or banned it outright. And yet, under the surface, Faster, Pussycat was quietly reshaping cinema, with bold sexuality, empowered women, and stylized violence. What began as exploitation became feminist legend. Banned, buried, and mocked in its time, now hailed as one of the most influential cult films of all time. And there you have it, 12 bold, rebellious films from the 1960s that defied the rules, challenged authority, and left a permanent mark on cinema history. Some were banned, some were butchered by censors, and some became underground legends, but all of them dared to say what others wouldn't. Which one shocked you the most? Or maybe you've got a banned classic of your own we missed. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from fellow film fans like you. And if you enjoyed this trip through cinematic controversy, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Globewise Entertainment community. We bring you the hidden side of Hollywood, the stories behind the stories. Until next time, keep exploring the reels that change the world, one scene at a time.